Hi, good evening everyone. I'm Ghaleon from the Poker Mania, and today we have 45 to 180 men coaching. Not the greatest of situations here on the right table, but I think I'm still going with the Ace King. And I have now 8 tables running, as can be seen here. Seems like he didn't necessarily have the nuts because he's thinking so long here. With the queens, I 3-bet pre-flop, king high flop, so just checking the flop, no point to really c-bet. And in here, facing 3-bet from unknown player or 7 hands, and he has not played single one, so I'm just giving up. When the turn goes checked here, we can check again or we can value bet. Both lines are reasonable. When he leads T small, I'm still calling. If he had bet like over half pot, I might be folding, but I think he still might have something weaker. He's value betting, and this seems more like a blocker bet, but I don't see a huge amount of value in raising either. Here with the aces, I'm going to c-bet small. No point to really c-bet bigger on this sort of extremely dry flop. We can most likely keep his range a bit wider. With the ace king on here, we 3-bet. I don't see much value in c-betting because no better hand is going to be folding, and you know, well, some weaker ones can be calling, but I like to keep bit of bond control, and no reason to really. We might get zero caught by some a highs, but just checking. And in here we line checked, so I will be leading with my top pair. And pretty nice looking river, so let's continue betting. It does complete the flush draw here, but I think I can still get some value by betting again. In here I went for check call on the flop. Now it completes the flush. I think I will check again and hope he tries to bluff the river, and I also avoid the situation that he raises me, which would be kind of ugly if we lead. And good evening to Neo and everyone else. Hopefully the stream is working. In here, Villain seems kind of tight, a little bit tight, so let's try to steal. And with aces leading, king 7 opening. Ace king, I could see bet this extremely dry flop. Try to get the pot down. And in here, c-betting against one player. The nines we can set mine, or on that flop we can also check call at least once. I think he can still have easily some ace king, ace jack type of hands. But if he continues betting, I think we are decent amount of time behind. Of course, it's questionable if he would value bet here with like jacks or kings or whatever, but it's also really dry flop, so I wouldn't assume to see huge amount of bluffs either. Calling a turn might be still reasonable, but I mainly called pre-flop to set mine, so I kind of like to follow that plan and not go then for some hero calling multiple streets. And so if the stream is working as it should, please comment on the Poker iMania chat. And the HUD explanation is shown on the below the chat window as usual. Ace Queen, really bad flop for us. Villains have hit that one really easily, especially with limp calling ranges and so on. So no point to see bet, and basically we have to fold against any reasonable sized bet here. We could be ahead of some king, queen, king, jack, queen, jack type of hands, but he's still leading in three-way pot, so it will tend to make his range stronger. So even if we have these pretty strong hands pre-flop, it doesn't mean that we should be too hesitant to lay down them on the post flop. With the pocket deuces, we had deep enough stack to set mine. Here. And again 3 callers, bad flop for us. No point in c-betting. Usually when we are like 3 or 4 way, we want to have either a decently dry flop to c-bet with unimproved hand or some sort of at least backdoor equity, like some backdoor, like we have 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw. That might be okay to c-bet some boards which are not heavily connected, like those 10-8, 10-9 type of flops. And pocket tens here, we can either call or 3-bet call. I think I will just call here. We hit the close to nuts here. And I'm planning to check raise. If this was multi-way, we could also easily lead it, but in here I like to check raise, and when it's this drawy, I don't like to just check call, because there is multiple cards that we don't really want to see. And if villain has like ace king type of hand here, he might be stacking off happily. Unfortunate for us, he did have the absolute nuts, but this time we were lucky ones on the virtual streets. But that is basically just a huge setup, no reason to think that our line was bad or anything like that. I think versus most players we still get enough action from weaker stuff. Of course, if villain is like capable of just laying down ace king type of hand here, then it might become more questionable to check raise call, but I think most players won't be making that sort of folds. Because even if we have like bottom set here, and in here, pretty tight looking player overall, personally I don't see a reason to continue here. His range just tend to crush us, as simple as that. And pretty active player, I'm going to shove ace jack with that stack depth. And queen 7 on the right, I think we get enough folds Calls on that flop in general to c-bet. A pretty questionable raise call from the villain. Well, we had kind of tight reach there, so even check folding that flop might be reasonable because we don't really have much of equity here. Because if he's not laying down some king highs, for example, then it becomes pretty bad to c-bet, but I think still that in general people are most likely folding, that sort of players are most likely folding king highs. Probably not that much of a high hands, but so basically in that spot we are usually more happy to c-bet against someone defending wide because they don't have great time to be flatting or raising some 10 high type of hands, but against tighter player it might be problematic because there are a lot of those good high card hands and so on. Neil asking about the pocket tens hand. I would, like bottom two pairs, I would just check call most often because when you start to think about the ranges, and this is kind of nasty spot because this villain has been playing tight. I think I will be giving up the river. He's been tight and he will have decent amount of king x type of hands there. And he bets big. Of course we still have a bluff catcher that every draw has missed, but I think I will make kind of exploitative fold and just believe him. I think we are too often beat. I think against loser looking player we should be almost always calling the river as well. Because that sort of players can have so much stuff that we still beat. This open shover I would be calling. This is really fishy looking player, but I think I still have to fold this one. Let's check what they have. Yeah, pocket kings. Problem with that looking player, of course our sample is small, but some of the fishier player might be also calling with some stupid stuff like some king jack or something like that. So and pocket fives, I just set mind. I don't really see reason to continue. We were on the three-way pot also. Even if we are ahead now, there is a lot of cards villain can continue betting and so on. So and he basically almost always has at least had two overcards there. And ace queen suited, definitely calling if there's no further action. And for the 10-10 hand, I think even top two pair, if we have a read, especially that villain is wrecky, then we should also just check call on that sort of board. And ugly spot, we have really loose looking player ISO shoving here. I don't love folding, but still with this sort of action I think we had to fold. Yeah, he had the same hand here. Well, because even a loose player against that sort of action should have pretty tight range. like ace king, I would have called. I would have called or some pocket tens most likely. And yeah, for the Neo comment, Danita comment that if we are not against the higher set, then we are still having decent amount of outs with our bottom set. But the problem there is that even though our hand is of course kind of strong, there is still good amount of better hands with the, because the villain has all of those ace jack bigger sets in his range, so. And another kind of weird spot, but pretty tight looking player, so I would probably call here still like jacks at least, but pocket eights will not be good to stack off. I think he might more often have some sort of hand like ace king compared to aces or kings or queens, because he's making such huge shove. But of course some tighter people also make those shoves with big pockets and hope someone calls with that type of middle pocket pair. And ace 5 here I can't really be shoving. Suited would be closer. I think suited would be fine to shove, but ace 5 off is just too weak. I think ace 10 off is most likely the bottom what we should be shoving here. Even ace 9 versus full table is probably not going to be good. And in here we min raise, call the smaller stacks if they shove. And king queen suited, this type of hand we can pretty nicely protect against a loser looking 3-betting villain. Of course if they shove we have to fold, but if they make some smaller sizing. 7-2 suited doesn't look like player who will fold that on against min raise, so I just fold. Some tight players we can still be min raise folding those trash hands, but I think against that sort of player we should be just open folding, weakest part of our range definitely. And ace queen, I'm again kind of nasty spot with how tight these players look. I think I'm still folding that one. Ace queen and jacks here. Good shove from the villain with the queen then suited. Unfortunate for him, we had the nuts basically. If there's some noise on the background, it might be because of my computer. Computer should be changing the power unit. At least that's what making the noise here. And in here I would shove probably any two with the PP sitting out. And about mixing the 9-mans, I think if you are playing longer sessions you should try to play so those 9-man STTs that you at least have one break every 2 hours. For example, if you are mixing also 18-mans and playing STT games, you can play so that every 2 hours you will have the break on the old games and not have STT games running. That's what I would recommend, because if you don't have any breaks at all and you play like 5 or 6 hours, it will be tougher than it really needs to be. Then 7 suited is going to be kind of too weak here. Of course, if we would open, we have to call against blinds. Something like 10-9 suited I might be actually shoving because the button is not that deep either. Or if he was on the tighter side, then we can make min raise and fold against the button and call the other two players. I also have some of like pocket threes here. I like to just shove because of the stack depth. And ace-8 suited I think is going to be good enough here against tricky looking player. He should have pretty wide range even if the BB is on the smaller stack size. Even Queen Jack is kind of strong for him in that spot I would say. Even like 8-9 suited should be pretty nicely in here. Like in here, I think 9 Jack with the antes is going to be fine to shove. And we get 2 calls, so doesn't look too great. Well, we are in pretty nice shape overall with them both having ace king, but no hit this time. There are some, I am using now the stack and tile software. There is still some things I would like to get better in here, but for example, I'm not sure if it's possible to have multiple stacks in use with this, or is it just a single stack? King 10 here, pretty close. Pretty tight looking player, most of them, so I actually raise it. Of course we have to call the one of the smaller stacks if he happens to shove, but ace 8 I'm just completing here against the limp. So like ace 10 off I would be raising. In here I think we can try to just stab the pot down, and the small stack does happen to shove, so that's one of the players we still have to call. Pocket kings, pocket sevens I'm calling here. Pretty loose looking player, 180 men. I would probably call like pocket fives at weakest of the pocket pairs. And in here against two limpers, I think 175, 200 is good sizing. Ace 4. I think with the antes and game being on the earlier part, we can still shove that one. Of course, it's knockout game, so they might be calling more often. 5-10 suited, probably quite close actually. I think folding is still likely a bit better. So I have the stack and tile so that I every time the hand goes on the flop, it will jump the table visible. There are some of the stupid parts, kind of, that if the flop would be here and I would like accidentally check my hand with the mouse here, it would also jump jump the table on the grid because it works so that it checked and suited. I think I will ISO raise here. We could also limp. The second die will work so that it checks if the flop is there and if our core cards are visible. Again, not the greatest of flops, but I think I can still kind of like c-bet folding compared to just check folding, but probably quite close overall because of what sort of player this player look like. We could get him to fold some of the better hands maybe by shoving the turn. But Jack also easily improves his range if he has any sort of straight draw, which are likely in his range as well. So if I had like flush draw here with my hand, then I would just shove the turn. And king 5, we are short stacked, but against 2 players, probably better to fold. 1 PP less, and we should definitely go with the hand. And in here, tight looking player 3xing, just folding. King queen, we will open and we have to call a lot of players. And king jack, I'm going with my stack depth. Of course, we are not that great shape against the open raiser range, but this sort of situation is pretty good still for us. Hopefully the background noise is not too unbearable. Babo had commented on the Twitch chat also. Ace 4, something like ace 10 for example, I would actually shove here and basically like pocket deuces because there was already 500 in pot, so even just winning that would be huge, but I think risk here of getting called and being in kind of pretty bad shape is still decent with the ace 4 type of hand. And ace 7, even this player looks really tight, I'm still definitely calling. And when we hit the bottom pair on the 4 or 5 way pot, what was it? So easy fold. Easy fold. If we don't hit 4 or ace, we have total trash, and that doesn't happen that often. Queen 10 suited, definitely shoving, even offsuit would be good enough. And pocket kings, pretty easy decision. 5-10 suited, we don't have any info on the guy, so let's min raise. On the long run he will be folding enough. And there's some weird, oh yeah, I should probably change the one setting that I have the folding button so that it moves the stack, the table on the stack, but I don't have it on the, I think on the raise button, which is kind of good also. And definitely opening the pocket jack 10 there. And the pocket trees I'm shoving here with that stack depth pretty happily. And Neo asking about getting 3-bet and being out of position. Basically, I think one question, for example, if we have a pair, is that can we set mine profitably by calling? And on the MTTs, there are a lot of situations that we can still be set mining against even decent sized 3-bets, but quite often the situation is such that we can't really profitably set mine. And of course it depends, like if we open from cutoff and the button is loose player, Reki type, good player, and he 3-bet small, we can have 4-bet bluffing range, we can call with, let's say, queen 10 suited type of hand. Still had good equity here. But what we want to have is basically good amount of playability from stuff that we call 3-bets out of positions, because we need to hit flop decently often, and if we call the 3-bet with something like ace-8, for example, especially ace-8 offsuit, we are going to hit so rarely on the flop, and even when we hit like top ace on the flop, we are behind decent amount of villain value range, so we are not in that great of situation. And in here I would be shoving any 2 against this player, and queen jack suited here is definitely good enough, though it's pretty close to bottom of my range. I think queen 10 suited would still be fine. Pretty loose call from the villain. Kind of surprised to see that sort of call from the player, but he might also of course be some Reki player. I think his call was good one with the suited queen. And with how tight looking players they are, I would be min raising the 8-9. Queen 9 suited is not going to be great here, and the BB is also short, so we will not get it through that often. In here I will min raise the ace 10 and stack off against the BB, probably, if he happens to 3-bet. Six deuce, kind of nasty with how short the villain is. And he continues to bet. Kind of nasty. Because if we are calling that, are we then calling the river as well? And seems we lost some of the hands. I checked here, and in this turn I definitely bluff cats call the turn if I check the flop, and I would be calling the river very often as well. And no reason to bet when he checks, and he had full house there, so thanks for not betting again. But when there is such really loose looking player and he had such a stack size, so I don't really love the idea to c-bet fold. I think c-bet calling might actually be better than c-bet folding, but here pretty nice flop. We are often going to get the pot down by c-betting. And we should get pretty rarely check raised here, so c-betting is good option for those reasons. Only 6 games running, so let's try to add a few more. Queen 7, too weak to open. In here we might actually be pretty close to final table, 15 people remaining. What is the situation here? 22 people. 10 jack, too weak. Okay, 10 snap calling. And looks pretty nice for us, but river is not our friend. Still good shove by the villain, nothing wrong with that. It's suited king 9. And this sort of crappy aces we can sometimes open raise depending of the table. It's basically best if players are as tight as possible. And 6-4 is most likely going to be profitable, so villain has to call really wide to make it unprofitable. And in tier we are decent shape, but no heart. And ace definitely shoving. If the cutoff shoves, then we have to fold pretty much, because, well, we can win some. I'm not actually totally sure of this situation, because we have such a small stack and he can still have decent amount of hands. We are in decent shape, so I think actually I'm going to call here and use his stack as shield for against these blinds that we often get these blinds on the pot as well, and we get into pretty nice situation against one player which can still have weaker stuff than we have. Pretty active looking player here. I think I'm going to be shoving here, but it's going to be pretty close. And pocket 3, multi-way pot, pretty drawy board. Big bet. And in here, going to raise 3x, even 2.5x would be totally fine, but I think villain will call that sizing as well, really often. And a7 calling. Safe turn card for us, so let's continue betting. Betting with good sizing. We could make it a little smaller when there is only one player. One player remaining, but I think minimum is still against random player like 200. And he raises. If he happens to have a bigger set, then so be it. Then so be it. And he hit 2 pair and then full house. Nice for him. Of course his flop call is just horrible. He had only mid pair facing big bet in multi-way pot, so. But of course when you get runner full house, it does help. It does help pretty nicely. And of course, well, I'm not sure if he was in like small blind here, then his pre-flop call might have been okay, but otherwise he should of course snap fold pre-flop. A6 here. I think we can open here with the idea to fold against everyone else than PB. We still have blocker value as a bluff against the other people, and PP will likely stack off light, so we have pretty good equity against his range. And King Jack shoving 7-10 suited, we get extremely good price, so let's call and hope we hit something huge. Of course, with hand like this, if we hit like King 8, I'm calling here, button can have so wide range that, and I get good price, and he has aces. Well, not trying to bluff here in the four-way pot with our gut shot, especially as there is now second flush draw opening. And in here we get good price, but I'm pretty worried about this guy. He has 40 hands, has played 8% of those, so I think his range is going to be extremely strong here. Oh, well, extremely strong here. Ace 8, villain is really short, so happily value shoving, and he's making totally unneeded late here. He's just giving free flop for me, and if I have total crap, of course I'm checking, and then if I hate the pair, he just basically gives free equity for me, and nothing more. If he had like big pocket, it might make some sense if he believes that I would fold something pre-flop, but of course I would have such a great pot odds that I would also be calling any two against his raise. I think his stack was so short, or at least like 85% or something. Yeah, the ace-4 was pretty nice. We can probably find it later on pretty easily. Let's add a few more tables. King Jack. We can see, but we can check. I kind of like checking because this board is so extremely dry. It's really tough to get villain calling multiple streets. He doesn't bet, so let's bet ourselves and maybe get more easily called by some pocket sevens or something. With some aggro reads we might want to also maybe check call the river because it did open to. And ace 5 here, unknown limper. I think I'll. I don't know, I fold. So early position still that. And we'll then hit 7th here. Sitting out on some table. One of the ugly side is that this stack and tile software doesn't have the auto click on the I'm back button, which was in the table optimizer. Of course I could be using table optimizer now as well, as it's pure PokerStars game. King 9 here. I will be shoving with the antes. I think it's marginally better than folding. Not by huge margin, but pocket force calling was pretty loose. I'm not totally sure about the King 9. King 10 offfold should be released 100. I could be leading the flop with the King 9 here. Also, would have been totally fine. And kind of hard to get called by weaker hand, I think, if I bet. Of course, it does look pretty stupid when I have checked his hand 3 times or 2 times, but like we are splitting against all. What the fuck? Guy had straight and checks. Wow, that's something. Well, he would have never folded on that hand on any street, so we actually saved some money by playing passively. Of course, being results oriented is not something we want to do. And in here we are on the final table, so seven people in the money. Unfortunately, it's the smallest game running. Smallest game running, which is not that great. And suited queen here, shoving the hand. 9-5 free flop, limp pot. So if this guy checks, I'm definitely leading. He bets, so I think I just call. It might be okay to just kind of ugly situations. Well, with this much action, I think we have to be folding. Most likely. Of course, sometimes we can be good, but at least one player has good flush draw here always. Yeah, I changed second tile to. I have also played on the 888 poker now, so. And the table optimizer only works on the, or only supports the PokerStars, so at least some point it worked, so it has probably not changed, I would assume. In here we can use a bit higher sizing, it's kind of drawy. Even bit higher than that would have been fine. Ace of Diamonds is not really great card. Not really great card. We still beat some combinations. Well, now even Queen Jack beats us. Flush draws beats us. So if he had bet the river, I would have folded because we don't really beat anything than basically pure bluff. That one we did still beat, but Jack 8 suited. I think I definitely want to play this hand. Yeah, I think I'm in race. I have to call the two smaller stacks. Something like Jack 10 suited, I would just open shove here with how the bigger stacks looked, but I think still in racing is going to be a bit better than bit better than open folding. The hand has still good amount of equity, and we have fold equity. Like here, we have weak pair, really small chance to improve, so pretty much no reason to continue. It was also multi-way on the flop. And in here we get flush draw, cut shot. We have basically nuts here, more or less. So if the villain wants, I am happily stacking off. Happily stacking off on the flop. And in here, even though we are kind of close to bubble, we can't really be that sure that we can get into money by folding, and of course we are not really looking that much to just get min cash from the tournament when we have decent spot to increase our stack. Some of my subs might be on the loser side, especially on these 90-man knockouts, because villains might be calling bit looser for a reason. Yeah, 2 more games coming. Let's choose some of these smaller ones. They start quicker, though it's soon on the break, so I probably don't want to have too many tables starting during the break time. One of the stupid things on this software is that it opens these new tables on the grid also, sometimes at least, it seems. Well, 10-9 I'm completing here if there's no raise, and when there is raise, it's easy fold for us. With suited hand we could still be calling, as it has pretty much more potential. And pocket deuces, if this guy would have limped, we could also limp, but not deep enough stacks to set mind here. And in here I'm just shoving. In these, even if we are on the direct bubble, I don't think there is too many reasons to make like non-all-in sizings, because the ICM is still, I think it's still pretty much lower than it's on the, for example, STT games. 2 BP stack had ace king as well. Ten tables now, and one more coming, but it will take $8 180 man and still missing 50 people. So, and for example here we have kind of crappy hand, but with the antes I think it's still going to be pretty nice, or quite much better to open raise than open fold. But if it was with no antes, I think open folding would be totally reasonable. There would just be way less to win by. And in here, these guys look kind of wrecky, and we can put a lot of pressure on them. Even if we don't cover the PP, he should be pretty hesitant to call. Don't press the I'm ready button, though it's really unlikely that the game would continue. So we have break now, hopefully on all of the tables, or at least most of them. 10-9 suited, no reason to raise here really, just call. Let's see what the villain does. If he checks here, then we can bet, and he continues to bet really small, and we get really good price to draw. So, and we hit the 9, there is really no reason to bet. Villain can still have like king, for example, or some jacks or such. So yeah, every game on the break now, so let's keep few minutes break now and come back then.